just pass this around every time you speak.
Okay.
But there's hope, because I should be meeting next week with the designers to redesign this room.
Chuck still has a beard. I thought Jen said he was
He
shaving.
likes it. I like
I
it.
thought he had to shave it.
Welcome, everyone, to the February 1st, 2024 Historic Preservation Commission meeting. My name is Kara Myers. I'm the chair of the commission. If my fellow commissioners would just introduce themselves for the purposes of roll call.
Chuck Smith. David Stites.
Doris Davis Fritsch.
Before we start the meeting, I'd like to briefly explain the procedures we'll be following tonight and share a couple of housekeeping items. This is going to be a little much because we don't have many of the public in the audience, but bear with me. If you're planning to speak today and have not already done so, please sign in on the sign-in sheets located on the table to your right and silence your cell phones during the meeting. To start, there will be a review of our December 7th, 2023, January 4th, and January 10th meeting minutes. Following this, there will be one action considered, a certificate of appropriateness to alter a landmark property by repairing an existing porch. The applicants will be invited to present their project and to speak to the application if they desire. The commission may ask questions of the presenters at any time during the public portion of the hearing. After the presentations and comments, the public is given the opportunity to comment. All speakers in support or opposition to the case are reminded that the commission's decisions will be based on the standards set forth in the Village Code. Once the public portion of the hearing is closed, the commission will deliberate and vote on the facts at hand and the village guidelines. During this time, no additional testimony may be given by anyone. The applicant will receive a letter documenting the outcome of the review following the meeting. Following this case, we will move to discuss the potential for a new village historic district, as well as allow some time for any updates on other commission activities. So we'll move on to unfinished business, the minutes. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2023. I was not at that meeting, so I will not.
I will make a motion to approve the December 7th, 2023 minutes as written.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? All opposed? The motion passes. Just the January 4th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Would anyone like to approve, to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have to recuse because I wasn't there.
Okay. Oh, then we can't vote on it. Yes.
All right, we'll save that for next time.
All right. All right, the January 10th, 2024 meeting. Is there any discussion? This was the big one.
Yeah, I was just looking at the size of the sign. It looks good. So it's the only thing we had really discussed.
It's different from the applicant.
Yeah.
Is that in there? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. So we move on to Case 1, Certificate of Appropriateness, and I will pass this on to Jill Wiedrich.
Okay, so case number 1 is a certificate of appropriateness. The address is 185 North Main Street. The applicant is Laura DiCaprio. The request is to alter the exterior of a landmark structure by repairing the existing structure. A couple of notes for the commission. This was designated by the Historic Preservation Commission as a local landmark in 2011. It also is on the National Register. It exhibits many characteristics of the mid-19th century Italianate. The French porch is actually a colonial revival replacement of an earlier porch. And for National Register, it's meets criterion B and C. For Deland family, as obviously were the residents at one point of the home, and also it being a good example of a mid-century Italianate. So that being said, the applicant proposes to replace the existing rotted columns with 8 new permacast structural columns, replace the rotting wood floor with new decking floor, rebuild the rotting wood stairs, replace the current top and bottom rails, and replace the current spindles with new spindles. So there's documentation that everybody has before them. And now if the applicant could join the commission at the table, because I think that might be easiest with one microphone, and if you could talk about your application.
Okay, so like Jill said, We are looking to replace the porch because it is rotting and it's a danger now. We can't really walk over to one of the sides because you'll literally fall through. So how would you want me to talk about this? Do you want me to go through the pictures? Do you want me to talk about our plans to go through it? Okay,
And if everyone could be as loud as possible.
sure.
You know, and while you're making the decisions you are,
Okay.
as you go.
Yeah, so I looked back to see what the original porch structure looked like, and the house went through kind of a few renditions. The very first pictures that we could find have the house with just some straight square columns in front with no railing. And then in the late 1900s, yeah, there's some pictures there of just the columns with no railings around it. And the columns are a little more decorative there. And then if you go to the next picture, the next slide, I mean, yeah, the next slide, you can see about 1898, they have the square columns that are a little more decorative, but they also have a railing around the front with square spindles. It's a little more, more plain, for lack of a better word. And then around, I'm guessing 1940s, we can't find evidence of when they actually put the existing porch up. I'm guessing it's the 1940s, 50s, I'm not sure. They put the round columns in, and they have this kind of ornate railing around, which personally, I don't think it fits the Italianate nature of the house, but maybe, I don't know, that's just my own thought there. So now that we have to make the decision as to what we want to do we recreate what's there, or do we kind of bring it back to more of an original look? My preference would be to bring it back to more of an original look, which is on the left-hand side.
What do you mean? Which is the left-hand side?
The left picture from 1898. I would like to bring the porch back to more of that kind of a look.
Okay.
Yeah, and, yeah, we list out the materials we'd like to use. Our contractor, Gil, is here if we have any questions for him. Yeah, do you want to come up? Mike's not feeling that great, so he's gonna stay back there. Yeah. You want the mic?
So the picture from 1898 has more of the, probably chamfered edges, 2 square columns, and some detail at the top. They are not round columns like are there currently, which are very much colonial, but they sit on a pedestal. And when you say you want to bring it back to the 1898 feeling and look, that's more it really is more appropriate for an Italianate. How much of that detail are you trying to emulate?
Hi, I'm Gil Vargas. What we were hoping, we do have a strict budget, so what we were hoping to do is actually try to start with a square column, and at the very bottom, just add that trim that brings it just the bottom half to the Italianate style. That way we can tie the handrails to it and not worry about that part. And I say in the future, we can always do the top trim here later on. When
If we can, yeah.
yeah, we can add that later on
Yeah, I
in the
mean,
future.
he's referencing a picture that we have, it's
Yeah.
one of the columns we have in the back, which is a closer look at what it looks like.
Yeah. It does have a little bit of a pedestal look to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was asking, but they have chamfered edges and
So
some
if you
detail at the top.
if you look at the pictures where of the 19 or 1898 photo, yeah, that one there, it shows that on the very bottom, it does have, it's you know, just basically, it's a square panel, you know, I'm lost with the words here. Basically, it's a bigger bottom with the trim in the center. Yeah.
If that's the right term, Jeff, that's what I call it, pedestal.
A base.
Yeah.
A base that the
Yeah.
top column is sitting on.
So it looks like there may be a trim in the center, if you look closely, where I think what we can do is have the handrail, have it low enough where the handrail will stop at the very top trim and at the very bottom trim. And then that square cut piece in the center would be trimmed out, and that would give it that Italianate style. It seems like it's there now to me, as you look very closely.
Are you looking at the one in the
The-
1858 one where it's just the square?
Yes, yep.
At the one on.
18, no, that's-
The 1898, 1898.
Gotcha.
So if you look really closely, you can really,
You're talking about this,
mhm.
right there?
Yes, at the very bottom, the base here, it seems like there is a little cutout in the center where it's like picture framed. It's not, I believe it's not solid. It's not solid like that photo there. I think it's picture framed. Now, in the original proposal, I really didn't know that we were gonna do the Italianate style. So the original proposal, I proposed an 8x8 column. I think this may be better suited with maybe a 6x6 will fit there better. And it will still, you know, more than enough to hold the load there, especially if there's three altogether.
I will let the architects and others speak. I was doing a little bit of research, and it did appear that they said typically 6x6 for the Italianate. So when you said that,
Yes.
it did strike a chord in what I had looked at before coming to the meeting.
Well, on her house, in the very front, there is an 8x8, I think it's 8.5, that's on the house already. So that's kind of why I went that size, because of that one. But I think what I plan on doing is, one of the things that I would like to do is the permacast is basically structural stranded fiberglass. And I wanted to go ahead and actually put these columns on top of the pier, the porch piers, instead of on the framing or on the deck itself. That way, that column lasts forever. That way, if I don't know if you have the proposal here, I propose to actually clean up the pier and put like a Comproco on top of it, because I think that's the next fail point for that porch. When I first went over there, I recognized that, to me, rot's like a cancer, and it was at stage 4. That's the way I kind of explained it. It's stage 4, so it's ready to come down. So now what I'm doing is looking at the actual pier itself, because I'm hoping that that's not suffering, because when there's water coming down on top of it, that's when it suffers structural damage as well. So I'm proposing to clean them up and put a thin layer of Comproco on top of it. That'll seal it up and keep it weather tight. And then put the structural columns on top of the pier itself. And then frame around it and put your deck on and so forth. Obviously, we're using wood. It's not gonna survive. Eventually, that's gonna have to be replaced as well. At that point, they can take anything out. They can take the deck, they can take the framing out, but they never have to touch the columns, because they're gonna be solid and it'll always be there. They won't have to worry about that part. So that's what I'm proposing, but I'm hoping that, which it should, the pier, you see how the column lands right on the edge of the pier. As it comes up, I'm hoping that the header on top lines up square on the column, so then that way structurally it'll be sound. It can't land on the very edge of it. So if everything lines out perfectly, then I'll be able to do that and put that all on top of the piers instead. So that's kind of the plan. That way, 50 years from now, they won't have to replace the columns.
How big are the columns, or the piers right now? Do you have some play?
Well, I'm assuming that the edge of the pier lines up with the header up on top, on the outside. So they should be right in plane. That's right, the reason why I put it right on the edge. That's where I'm thinking where they are. The pier itself, I believe it's around 10 to 12 inches wide. And the width, I'm sorry about, this is a layout that I do just to do a proposal. So as I do this, I build it in my head and I'm able to write it down on paper after that. I wasn't planning on using this for this. I would have put more numbers on this and did a little bit better job than this, but I thought it was gonna be for me, I'm sorry. I thought it was just gonna be for me, so that's why it doesn't have all the numbers.
Well, in many ways, it is just for the meeting. So because you've entered it into as evidence,
Yeah.
I just need to make a photocopy before you leave.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I believe this is about 30 inches or 36 inches. This is up to scale. I think every half inch equals a foot. So that's the scale on this. So I believe this is about 30 inches wide, the piers themselves. So this is the actual pier on the very bottom ground level, and then this is the framing that goes on top of the pier. And so I'm proposing to put the columns on top of the pier itself. This pier here has suffered a little bit of weather, but I checked it and it seems to me like it's still pretty stiff. And so I'm thinking that if I were to put Comproco on top of all of them, then that would help keep them stable, and, help for the future.
What is Proco?
Comproco?
A sealer?
Yeah, Comproco is concrete. They normally use it for exterior, when you do an addition or of the foundation of a home. You put that on the outside and it makes it watertight, and then you fill it with your grade and everything, you buried it, so it's under the grade. So that's just a little bit of that on top. I think that's probably the best product to use there. And then it should last a long time. So,
The piers are brick,
yes, they are.
and does the brick show on the
Should we
exterior?
maybe,
Yeah, they do.
I'm just gonna go through, yeah, sorry.
Are the piers brick?
We'll put this right here. Yes, it's brick.
And we can see the brick from the street, from the
Yes.
sidewalk?
You can.
Okay. So the Comproco would just be on the top and the back, but not the street side?
Just the top.
Okay.
So what I'm concerned with is rainwater coming down and between the bricks, because that pier is not designed for that.
Yeah.
So it's not designed for water coming through the top.
So the pier's currently brick,
Yes, they
you're
are.
just
Yes.
recreating it more solid?
Well, not
I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna pass this around just so we have the public record. Doris?
I was just asking if the piers are currently brick. One of those pictures I'm looking at right here, I think it's by the stairs, it looks like a cement block. But that might be the porch, or the part that juts out versus the piers on the corner of the porches.
No, that's brick.
That's brick? Oh, okay. Oh, it's just the coloring looks cement, like cement, okay. It's just the coloring. Odd. Okay.
Oh, it shows very nicely the brick right there.
Do I have the same picture up that Chuck is referring to?
Yes,
All
thanks.
right.
It's not original brick, that's for sure. So, Laura and Mike, you prefer to keep the railings?
That's what we're thinking. That's what we'd prefer. The railings offer, because we're on such a busy street, such a busy corner, when we want to go out and use our porch, it does offer some sense of security or a little bit of privacy when we're sitting out there. It also, when you're sitting in your car looking at our house, it does offer some barrier to the windows, to our front, because the windows are floor to ceiling. So I would just feel a little more exposed if we didn't have something there. So that's what we would like, is to keep it.
So I don't know if we want to do this piecemeal. Could you speak also a little bit about the handrail and the rest of the construction on the porch, please?
Okay, I guess we could start with the framing. It's all gonna be pressure treated 2x8, all tied to the rim joists on the house, with your standard copper, flashing on the back, tied into the house. And then you have, the decking is gonna be made out of sapele. Sapele is a weather-resistant type of material, wood. I believe it's from,
Tropical wood.
yeah.
That's it right there, right?
Yeah, this is it right here, by the way, yes. So, the handrails are also gonna be out of the Sapele product. We are gonna cut, sorry, folks, but I had samples and I forgot the samples for the handrails. But we're gonna cut them in a way where it sheds water. The handrails are going to be painted, if I understand that correctly. So we're gonna make sure it sheds water and, we tie them, all the spindles nice and tight, so, we don't have to worry too much about shrinkage and so forth, and cracks and water getting inside there. I am going to, a home like this requires everybody to be, part of the project. They say that a child, needs the community to raise it, and I think this is the same thing. A home like this, I think everybody should be involved in. The DiCaprios don't know, but they've got some work cut out for them soon. So I think what we're gonna try and do is, I am going to purchase all the decking materials as soon as I get a go. And I'm going to have them seal the bottom, before we put it in, before we install it. So I'm gonna see if we can find a really good, some type of marine grade varnish, to put on the very bottom, and then, then that way when we install it, then we can do the actual top. This is not gonna take any stain. This is all gonna be, just clear coated, and that's it. She wanted, a red look.
I like the way it looks.
Yeah. It's very rich when it's wet. I do have another one that I actually use for a, little coffee stand to protect the coffee stand, cover. Anyway, so, yeah, I think that's, pretty much it. I mean, the columns, as you know, we're going to, try to, mimic what she has here as far as detailing. It's, if we proceed with what we were thinking and get the bottom base done and tie our handrails to it, and then in the future, this part could be done easily when, you know, when it's possible. So,
What will the balusters look like?
the spindles?
Yeah.
The spindles would be just a square, right now a square 2.5 or 2 3/4 square spindle.
Okay.
Yeah, I included just some examples of what it could look like. This is just a picture from the internet.
Okay.
But it could
Some
look like
makes
that.
so much.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You know, when I first took a look at this, I thought some of the detail of the railing would be important. I mean, we designated it, and it had the current porch on it. But I do like the idea of going a little bit back to something more appropriate with the Italianate. But what I'm just not as comfortable with. The other thing is when people put new porches on, they have to make the railing the height of the code. And in this case, because of the aesthetics and the historic nature of the home, it does not have to be as tall as code. So I would like to have a little bit more detail about measurements and what height is the railing going to be, how substantial are the balusters. And we talk about it being more of a square column, but I'm a little vague on what the detail is going to look like there. And if the corners are going to be chamfered, which is typical of an Italianate. And I assume if the columns are this permacast and that they're square and not chamfered edges. But I don't know that from what you're stating. And also we talked about the piers, but there needs to be a skirt under there as well to be more historic. Not open underneath the
Starting from the pier, the piers themselves are going to have the skirt. They're going to look identical to what you see there in the photos. Everything that I spoke of is interior, so it's the bones, the outside shell is it's going to look identical to what they have there. It's going to have the skirt going all the way around. So as far as that does cover some of the pier, as you can see in the photo, it goes over the pier a little bit. So you can't really see the top of the pier.
skirt.
The skirt, yeah, so the outer joist.
Okay. I wonder, yeah, since I wouldn't want this, what I envision as a skirt to go over the pier. So can you straighten this out?
He's talking about covering the rim joist with a piece of finished wood.
Right.
Could you
And
just speak?
You're talking about
The lattice
the
underneath,
lattice underneath.
or
of
whatever that
yeah.
pattern is.
Oh, okay. I
And they're
see.
between the piers now.
Okay, got it, okay.
Maybe, could you kind of repeat that for the microphone for us to have as a record, just maybe go through that quickly again?
As far as
That-
the skirt,
Yes.
yes, so, on the proposal, it says that I'm going to, install a cedar, skirt around the rim joist. And it goes, around the entire, decking. So,
And then under that, there's the lattice work, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So pier lattice work,
mhm.
either the same or similar to what exists right now?
Well, what's there now, you really can't see because it's covered with mulch. So you really can't see the very front. You can only see maybe of this much of the concrete, or the block, I should say, the brick, because the whole thing's all covered in mulch. So,
It's 12 inches from decking to grade on this one photo, which is pretty much just the skirt.
Yeah. I was asking you that question because I just wanted to make sure that, Doris, that you got your question answered. So I think what Gil and Chuck are saying is that there really isn't the space for a lattice work element. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think they were saying that there isn't much space and it kind of goes mulch up to that, but I'm going to pass this over.
Right now, I believe there's an opening about 4 inches or so coming across the very top. There is a lattice way in there, buried behind everything. I think that's holding the mulch up. So that's what they have there now. In order to, yeah, I think,
Yeah, I'm asking Jill to put those pictures up. 'Cause the color might look different on the screen versus what we, I still can't really tell. But that's what we're talking about, right? What's behind all the plantings there.
Right,
You can't
right.
see it
Yeah.
with the hydrangeas.
So,
Yeah.
but the answer to my question is that they would be rebuilt as they are now, basically. It's nothing different. If it has a lattice pattern, it'll have a lattice pattern. That's fine.
the answer to that is yes. Now, the next question was the base. What was the next question? There were several questions.
Right. I think just being able to better understand that there's going to be a 4-inch column, there's going to be, is this going to be larger at this larger base? Let me find that picture.
Yes, so,
What did I say? Oh, 6.
6-inch
Sorry. 6-inch column. A 6-inch column, it's not going to be chamfered. At some point in the future, you're hoping to add this element, but not in part of the original project. Where it comes above, then there's going to be the railings. And will those railings be the same height as the current railing, which is a little bit lower than code? What, is there going to be a detail, were you saying, right above that? Are you going to enlarge the column at that point to have more of a pier-like look? I wasn't sure about that. And then I think the question is, you had given us the approximate size, 2.5 to 2 3/4 for all the railings. And then, I think there's a preference in your pictures for the kind of weight and spacing of this image rather than this, where they seem thinner and farther apart, the railings. So I'm not telling you what to say, but those, I think, are some of the questions.
so the base on the columns are going to be wrapped with sapele as well. The columns, right now, we're thinking of a 6x6. We wrote everything down as an 8x8, but I think the 6x6 would be more appropriate for this.
Question? What's the
Yes,
size of this one?
thinking it's a 6x6. So,
That's the back porch,
yeah,
This is 6x6?
I believe so, yes. From the picture, I would say yes to that.
Okay.
So that's,
Here's the full.
So, okay for me to proceed?
And then you say you're wrapping
Yes.
this bottom to make it a little bit larger by the
Yes.
sapele, is that what's called?
Yes, by Sapili. So what would it would do, it would, the bottom section would, become, I would say, 7.5 by 7.5 on the very bottom. And the base, the base bottom would be almost the same height as your rail. And I'm assuming, I don't know if this is correct or not, but since the deck is low enough and really doesn't need a handrail, that we would be able to build it, you know, at its height, which is about 23 inches or so at height. So the base height will be determined by the rail height, because everything has to land within the solid trimming of the base. The handrail part, and the spindles themselves are gonna be 2.5 to 2 3/4 thick, solid square, sapele.
Well, they're pretty massive.
Yeah.
now. They're pretty
Mm-hmm.
heavy and turned. And because they're square, I think it might be too massive.
Yeah, because they're not chamfered.
Nothing's too.
Are you,
I know that this is difficult, but if we could keep on passing the microphone around, or at least speak as loud as we can, that's okay.
oh, not, no, not at all. Did you want to make that comment, so it's?
I think that to be fair to other applicants, there's too many questions here, and I'd like to make this more like a workshop and figure out what we're going to have, and then have the applicant come back with the actual dimensions, unless we can write a specification tonight for them. I'm starting to do that.
There's so many variables and we don't have a drawing that specifies any of them.
No, and I don't know what 2.5 or 2 1/4 means.
Visualize it without a drawing of some sort or sample.
Is that, Laura, is that a problem?
What?
To delay?
I mean, it's annoying, not gonna lie, because
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, but,
So let me ask, Laura, let me just jump in for a second. If the commission has specifications that they wish it to be constructed to, they can condition an approval on those specifications, if there's the desire to do that. If there's the desire to wait, that can happen too. But you are able to specify, it would be a condition.
If this is going to be, you know, the construction of this, if it's going to be, you know, we're starting with the pier and ceiling and the floor, well, I guess you've got the columns too. I'm wondering if you could get it started, you know, so that you can get moving, and then we can get the information about the details that you're suggesting and maybe some guidance from the commission, and then come back and look at that, so you could get started. I don't want to hold you up. It is a little bit challenging to say, like, we're looking without our little rulers here, you know, what it's going to look like, the rails. So maybe we could do that. I don't know if people would be available for, you know, a special meeting to come back, so we could turn this around more quickly. So those are just a couple of ideas that I have. I don't know if it's doable on the part of the commission, but let me just.
So is it just the railings, really, at this point, that we have a concern about? I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing. Everything else seems to have been kind of smoothed out. It's just the scale of the railings.
Well, and I think, well, I think it could be discussed later, the detail that's going to be made it look more like a pedestal at the bottom. If the visually, especially Chuck can picture the size of the column, the 6 by 6, and if that's going to work. I mean, I think they look very more massive than that in my vision, but we are trying to go back to a little bit more authentic look. So I would pass that question on to Chuck, and I would be very willing to approve part of it and then look at more of the details on another, with some more information, more clear drawings of what that's going to look like. But the size of the pillar, the mass of the pillar, the column, I think is important, and I prefer to defer to Chuck on that.
So if you can provide the specifications that we need to go by, like if the pillar can't be more than 6 inches, I mean, can't we just work with that? I feel like we're getting into some territory here where it's personal preference, and we are gonna be, paying attention to the Italianate details of the porch and, respecting that. But I don't want it to get to a point where it's like we're creating these that we're not gonna be able to do, because for cost or whatever. It would just be more helpful for us if we had like a very, okay, you're approved if you can adhere to these guidelines, because I feel like that's doable.
I think that this is a perfect compromise would be to allow you to get moving on the structural part because I don't have an issue with the 6-inch column, and I don't have an issue with the Sapele decking and the whole construction of that. I don't think there should be a skirting, actually, since it's only 4 inches. It's better to let the air breathe underneath this deck. And I do have a question about the Sapele, but it has nothing to do with this group here. So I could talk to Gil about that outside of this meeting. But so I think that's perfect. What I have a question about is I can't picture the Sapele around the column and what that exactly looks like. So I would love that to be looked at a little more carefully by our applicant and just give us a little more detail on the railing system. I'm not inventing a new railing system. I understand your concerns. It's just that it would be great if you use that full 4/4 Sapele for the casing around the base, because that would give it some heft. You had mentioned 3/4, and so because you said 1.5 inches more than 6. So that's the kind of thing that I think would be really nice to see for a board to really make a decision on that. But I also recognize that the porch is falling down and it's time to get it repaired. So let Gil go at it and get the guts of it fixed and go for it. So that was a good compromise.
Yeah, and if you recall, we did this on the fence on Holbert, so I think that it's a great way to go. So let's talk about the things that the applicant can move forward on and things that we're approving at this meeting. And then let's talk about the additional information that the commission requires. And what I will do is I will write up an approval that specifies what's approved and then provide a letter with what additional information is needed for the next meeting. And then once the applicant is able to get that additional information, we can schedule the next meeting. So I'll start.
All right. I just want to make sure that David didn't have something that, okay.
Okay, so I heard the columns, the decking, and no skirting. So the columns being 6-inch by 6-inch, is that a maximum, or what does that look like to the commission?
It's actually only available in 6x6 or 8x8 or 10x10. So
This is 6 by 6. Okay, I'm not an architect or an engineer. All right, as far as the decking goes, is there anything specific with the decking?
No.
Okay, and then also no skirting, is that the consensus?
Gil is calling the skirting the 1x10 board that runs around. It covers the pressure-treated structure.
Yeah,
So I'm good with that. I think that as a cedar skirting that's going to be painted, correct? I think we're good with that. I think what we were talking about was if there was any lattice underneath the deck. That was the question. And my opinion is that it doesn't need it.
And if the applicant doesn't want it, I'm fine with that too. Any thoughts? Okay.
okay, are the columns going to be a specific color?
White.
White. Okay, so I have 6-inch by 6-inch white columns, the decking as proposed, and cedar skirting that will be painted, and no lattice. Okay. So then let's move on to, and we'll do a vote at the end of all this, but I'm capturing everything. What are the items that you request additional information on? I have it's Sapele, Sapele. Sapele around the column details are necessary. More detail with the railing system. Was there anything else?
Okay, so my two only specific things, I like the wrapping around the base, especially because I think you said the partial, like the half columns that are already on the house, you said were 8, right? So by wrapping the bottom, I think it'll bring it better in scale with those. I think that's great. The only thing I would like to see is what the transition will be from the column itself to this wrapping around it. What kind of molding or whatever the trim is going to be around it, so it's water's just not sitting right here. So just some thought as to what that detail would be. And then perhaps once those kind of decisions are made and thought about, then you can get a better feel for what the actual scale of each of the spindles is going to be. Because once you can kind of see it, you can kind of play with that size. So for me, those are the only two sort of things that are in the air.
And I think maybe you have already, you have some of these products and you already have thought it through since you have the size of the rails and all of that. So maybe doing something like you did here and, just showing us just so we can see a little better, here's the column, here's the size with it wrapped so we can see proportions, and then the proportions of, the railings and all of the different elements of that. And you said that you have some samples so that you could share it, and that just would kind of move it along, I think, to that next stage. Would folks agree with that?
I'm sorry, folks. It's all simple stuff. Like I was saying, I'm sorry that I don't have that here, but it's all simple stuff. I could put that all together with no problem. And I'll do a drawing for the column. And I'll bring samples of the products that I'm gonna use for the whole thing. So I'll have the the railing height and everything on the paperwork, similar to this. So.
I will say no apology necessary, and, it's just us, trying to picture so that we're just very clear about what you're doing so that we can move it forward. So then what we would be doing, I'll actually pass it back to Jill because maybe we can see if, I don't know if folks here would be able to come to a special meeting, if you could turn it around quickly. We really don't want to hold you up.
I'm flexible. Time-wise, I'm very flexible, so whenever you're ready, I'll be here. And
Yeah, I'm pretty flexible too.
I, so,
Yeah, so let's do this. Let's talk offline, figure out the next date. The only requirement that I have is I have to be able to provide a proper notification. So we can look at some dates, schedule that. Is the preference for just Thursday nights work? Okay, so maybe we can look at something like in 2 weeks' time, something like that? Okay, so I just want to wrap up this. you're looking for column details of the lower portion of the column. More details with the railing system, and the applicant has noted that they will bring samples of the different elements that are described. So we got 3 things there. I'll repeat, 6-inch by 6-inch white columns, the decking, cedar skirting that will be painted, and no lattice. So what it sounds like the commission is looking to do is approve a portion of the request and hold on a portion of the request. So a hold letter will be provided to the applicant. They're here, they're hearing all of this, but I'll summarize it again for you. And again, it would be an approval, a portion of the proposal to be approved with the conditions noted, the 6-inch by 6-inch, the columns, the decking, the cedar skirting that will be painted, and no lattice. And then the hold letter that will note the details for the lower portion of the column, more detail with the railing system, and that the applicant shall bring samples of the elements described.
And because we don't want them to come back and then have more questions, I'd just like to clarify, is this an original column to the back?
I think so. We have 2 of those left.
So I just wanted to bring your attention to this, Chuck. It does seem like it's not, from my eye there, it doesn't necessarily look like it's the thickness of this. It does look like it's thinner. So what are your thoughts on that? That the board itself, that it would be wrapped with to bring it out to that? It just doesn't look like it's, oh, okay.
I believe that lower section was replaced. So it was a lot thicker before.
Okay.
I think it's a lot more, more stock involved in the whole thing. And yes, I think the gentleman here was correct. I think this size would be a lot better, trimming it out. And essentially what you would have is a couple of these cut a little thinner alongside of each themselves, making like a picture frame and a trim in the center. And that would encompass that whole thing. And it would be, you know, similar to what you have there. You see the, yes. And yeah, so you would have, I didn't bring up pencil.
So you're saying it's kind of what we might be seeing here?
So, it would be,
You're talking about this.
that would be, so these, you'd have 4-piece.
If you could, thank you.
You would have a 4-piece, this is basically, I'll call it like a 5-piece system. So it would be your center, which would be that panel. And then you have your outside pieces. And then inside, we would put a little trim. You know, just to top it off. Like so. And then the column itself, at a certain point, you know, eventually it would have that topping on it. For now, we're gonna go straight up to the header on the very top. And the bottom here, really don't know what trim we're gonna, because we have to actually find something that's kind of massive and will fit with this style here. But I'm assuming that in the past, this was, it had a trim on it, it rotted, and they took it off and replaced it with this piece of, I believe that's cedar, pre-primed cedar is what's on there now, with a small cap on it. So they took this out of there. So I'm hoping that, and as far as the corners here, they can't be routed like these here, because these columns are hollow and they're fiberglass. So once you route them, it'll structurally be undermined. So, yeah. So, but everything else we can do and get it very close to this. I think it'll be, I I know that these homes require a lot of, you want everything to be made out of wood. This part right here, I think is a good compromise. It'll help the house last a long time.
Can I ask about that? Yeah, I was just curious, while I don't think this is in our wheelhouse or what we should talk about, but I'm just wondering, why do you want to wrap it with wood? If you're already talking about doing everything you can to keep from brick to the fiberglass, why not use a white PVC or something like that? So literally the whole thing is impervious.
Because I thought it would be something that, I thought that's something that you folks would be against. But we are using Sapele on the outside, and what I'm more concerned with is the future. So this column right here, this column to me is very important. Not everyone, you decide to sell the house in the future, not everyone's gonna take care of the house the way it's supposed to be. So this can rot and can be replaced like this, but this can't rot. This is forever. Yeah. Well, where do we stop though? So do we do the handrail the same way? I mean, we could turn around. I would gladly do it because I think it's all gonna be painted. No one's gonna know the difference. You're not gonna be able to get the trim in the same material, the caps. That would have to be wood. But this material, the vinyl material, the PV. Should I just stop? No, go ahead. The PVC material, basically prime it and paint it well, and you can 15 years later it's still the same. You don't even have to paint it anymore. It's pretty fantastic. But I am a believer of, wood too. I'm a carpenter by trade. I love my wood products and I love beautiful homes like this. But on the outside it's nothing like PVC sometimes.
Well, and I'd like to hear Laura's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so I think what David's saying is, like, could that be produced out of PVC and look pretty similar from the street instead of wood? And would that be more cost effective?
PVC is pretty expensive. I probably not. But I can look into that. But I think in the future, yes, it's more cost effective because this is going to go eventually. So yes, in the future, it's more cost effective. So in the sense of time, yes, it's less painting, less prepping, less maintenance. Basically, it's just
Yeah.
no.
You're putting all the effort into making the whole thing. I mean, you're coating the brick, you're doing everything, so why not have the whole thing as solid as you can? If you have to replace some flooring, I mean, as you would on a
Yeah.
porch or
So
railings,
that's-
then
Yeah, so that's basically when I put this together, I'm gonna make it very simple to replace the deck, because I know it's gotta be replaced eventually. But structurally sound, the house is gonna be fine, because this goes, the roof goes, everything goes, it's just a mess. So it's
Yeah, I think that David and Laura are onto something because what we often do is we'll build this out of Sapele because it's really easy to do a nice tight joint as opposed to PVC to make this frame. But then we find a PVC cap piece that exists, like the areas that have the water sit on them and hit. If you make that PVC, it really helps to extend the life of the whole assembly, including, I'm not for really putting a little piece of trim in here. I think just a square detail is probably fine because if you would probably want to do this detail in a little PVC piece because again, that's the little piece that will rot really quickly. And so you either don't do it or do it in PVC. And oftentimes we actually put the last little piece across here as PVC and everything else is Sapele. But you're the carpenter, so you'd know what you wanted to do there. maybe you just want to leave an air gap there so that it breathes, and that would be fine too. But yeah, I know where you're coming from, because I oftentimes am in front of another board, another historic preservation board in another village, and they want all real materials. Whereas we try to be a little more practical here and work with our applicants and accept that, wood does rot, and if you can't tell the difference between with the final product, we tend to be good with that. So you do have that option to use PVC where you think it would be helpful to your client. So,
And cost-wise too, check that out.
But please, when you come back, provide all those details.
Yes. Yep. I'll have samples and drawings of everything.
We'll try and turn it around quickly.
Yeah. Yep. I don't think it's, this is normal. I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't think I had to do this. And, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah, but
More than enough to do.
yeah. So, but yeah, this is normal. I kind of done this before, so. But this is no big deal. I'll have the drawings and get everything kind of settled in as far as the answer.
I
all the
appreciate that
questions.
you're here.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to scheduling. 2 weeks from now is the 15th. Does that sound like, and I'd like to have the drawings then by the 8th? Is that a possibility? That's right around the corner. That's next Thursday.
Would I need to actually be at that meeting, or could I look at things?
You'd have to actually be at that meeting.
We can't do it that day.
Okay.
The following Thursday, after the 15th?
So that would be the 22nd? I don't see why not.
Is there a different day of the week? It sounds like David can't do either of those.
Okay.
Now, as long as there's, 3 of us here, but I'm sure that you would like to be able to see it as well.
Three of us could vote on it, so if,
Correct.
I wouldn't mind David looking at it prior and
Okay.
just giving us.
And providing feedback?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
So do we want to say then that the meeting will be on the 22nd?
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
And that's soon enough for you because you'll be able to get started? Because that's pushing it out a little further. Okay.
okay, with drawings by the 15th.
Yes, I can do the drawings by the 15th.
Okay, awesome. All right. So, is everyone ready to take action? Do you want me to read anything again? Okay.
I only have one simple thing. I wonder if you just make the lattice work optional. They take away, a foot of mulch and all of a sudden it's gaping hole and they want to do it. That was my only comment on that.
Okay. So the motion is to approve in part and hold in part to alter the exterior of a landmark structure by repairing the existing porch on condition that the columns be white and 6 inch by 6 inch, the decking as proposed, cedar skirting that will be painted, and noting that the lattice work is optional. And then for the hold, you are requesting details for the lower portion of the columns, more detail for the railing system, and samples of the elements described. So do we have a first? A motion?
Make that motion. Thank you, Joe.
I'll second that motion. Thank you, Joe.
All right. And so the applicant will return on the 15th, 22nd.
I have one other question. Not about that, about scheduling. I was just looking to see if that's almost the next meeting. If you don't if you're not going to get moving on the railing system, I'll do either way. I'll do a special meeting. But if you're not going to move on the railing system, is this something that could be done at the next meeting? Or do you need to move more quickly than that?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay,
Shall we wait till the next, our regular meeting? I think that's. Which is the first week in the month.
which is March 7th, I believe?
And you know, you can let us know. You go home and you go, oh, that's a bad idea. Just let us know.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's okay to wait. I mean, as long as we can get started.
Yeah, because you have an approval in part.
Right, right. That's, I think that gives us.
Again, let us know if you realize that was a bad call. All right.
So based on that, if you can submit, and I'll take a photocopy of the drawing, but if you can submit a building permit, that way I can get my colleague Mark Lindsay, the code enforcement, fire marshal, and plan reviewer to move the permit along.
Okay, all right. She wants copies of this plan? You want to?
Yeah, let me steal that now.
Right, you're not gonna fall through. Every time the mail lady comes over, I'm like, hope she doesn't fall
Liability
through.
insurance, I hope you have.
Well, I've done a couple pass-bys.
Yeah, Gil put up the 2x4.
Oh.
He's taking care of it.
It's heavy snow days, which we haven't had many, but a lot of wet stuff coming down, then I pass by and just take a quick look. So, it's not going anywhere, but
Not yet. You can't tell, but it's bad. I can literally go to some parts of it and take a chunk out of my hand and just rip it out with my bare hand. It's not good. No. But I'm glad you can't tell. The hydrangeas do a lot to cover it.
Well, that's, yeah, you look at the head drainage, you don't.
Yeah.
pass that at all.
Right.
every single time I go to Canandaigua, I pass by, I go through Bloomfield, and they have a house that the whole corner looked like an eyelid, it just came straight down, and just folded over.
That's what we're
The
avoiding.
post is gone.
Yeah.
I saw that, I was like, oh, I thought of your house. I was like, oh, better go over there.
Yeah, I gotta check it.
Gil, we just
Yeah.
designed.
Do you need me to get Charlie?
Porch for a house, and that's with the thermometry, with the same columns.
Uh-huh.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We ran them all the way down to the masonry.
Oh, you did, okay, yeah. It's so much better.
Better.
I mean, homeowners tend not to do what they're supposed to do.
Oh, I never forget that. Yeah, let's do that quick,
So,
and then we'll
good
vote
to,
again.
you know, build properly, build with those laws.
I apologize. We realized that we did not go through the
The
5
standards.
factors, the standards. So, yeah, we're just going to basically go through the different areas. Yeah. It won't be anything new.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Gil did the work on Heidi's.
Thank you very
house.
much.
He's done work on Heidi's house on South Main Street.
Oh, okay,
We had that
Oh,
workshop. with-
yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got his name
Oh.
from. Heidi gave, yeah.
okay. She's talked very well of
Yeah.
it.
So Jill, are you going to lead us through this?
I will, Chuck, I appreciate you. I got so caught up in our approval in part, but we're gonna run through the standards, just so everybody at home hears this. We're gonna run through the standards and we will vote again. So, the first standard is the general design, character, and appropriateness to the property of the proposed alteration or new construction.
I think at this point, it's a little hard to answer that one because we don't have the actual final design
Correct.
in terms of columns.
So, yep, if you could talk about, you mentioned that there's the 6-inch by 6-inch white column, the decking, the cedar skirting, and the lattice being optional. If you could speak to those elements, why those are appropriate.
I believe in terms of the architectural style and taking it back to an earlier time, the 6x6 columns make sense. I believe the skirting makes sense in terms of, I think what's already there. and just finishing off that design. The decking material, I think, is a great choice. And then there was the fourth thing, I can't remember. You just said it. What was the fourth thing? Or the lattice optional. And then leaving the lattice optional in terms of ultimately where they get in the overall final design, once we get to see everything again.
And I believe Doris mentioned that, you know, there could be a situation where at some point that the material in front is gone, and so it's important to leave that as an option to place the lattice in the future.
Right, right. That was my point.
Anything else on that one? Okay, the second one is the scale of the proposed alteration or new construction in relation to the property itself, surrounding properties in the neighborhood.
No, the scale is excellent. It is not back to its original smaller form, but it's the same size as what we see now, and that looks very appropriate with the house.
Anything else?
I'll point out it that the columns that are being installed are replacing existing columns, so they're in the same location as well, which is a nice rhythm for the house, matches the original rhythm for placement of columns.
Okay, number 3, texture and materials and the relation to similar features of other properties in the neighborhood.
Anyone want to take this? I always feel like we're repeating.
Yes, the texture and materials of the proposed replacement columns and decking are very appropriate because they will appear the same. The columns will appear as wood, painted wood columns, and the decking is going to be wood replacing wood. So it's very appropriate for the matching the features of the existing house.
Okay. Visual compatibility with surrounding properties, including proportion of the property's front facade, proportion and arrangement of windows and other openings within the facade, roof shape, and the rhythm of spacing of properties on streets, including setback.
I believe it's visually compatible. One of the things that Chuck just stated was that the columns will be in the same position as the columns originally were, so the proportion and arrangements is compatible. Does anyone else want to add anything?
Okay, the importance of historic architectural or other features to the significance of the property.
I like that the columns are going to pay homage to the 1898 rendering that we have of the home, with the columns being square.
Anything else?
Yes, as our applicant mentioned, the detailing proposed is going to be much more appropriate for the Italianate style of the home and replace what is right now colonial columns.
Okay, we're going to vote again. Would anybody like me to repeat the conditions of the approval and the elements for the hold? Okay. So the motion is to approve on condition, as detailed earlier, to alter the exterior of a landmark structure by repairing the existing porch and to hold a portion of the application. Can I get a first?
I
You're going to do it
make that
again?
motion, thank you.
Okay. And a second?
I'll make the second.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
All right, so earlier we mentioned that the application would be back later this month, but through additional discussion, it will be at the next Historic Preservation Commission meeting on March 7th.
What do you think, Laura? We're pretty tough.
Do people want to spend another 15, 20 minutes to get prepped for the next meeting, or, we're live? Yep. All right, so, other business, what we were hoping to do is really get kickstarted on looking at a potential of having another historic district. I'm just going to National Register District. So I'm just going to go through a few comments to get this on record, to get us started, and then we'll move to Doris, who will give us some more details about reading our map from the 2014 reconnaissance level survey, and basically just kind of prep ourselves. We're hoping that at the next meeting, we'll be able to do a workshop and really get rolling with this. So one of the, and some of this you're already going to know, but I know that this will be on the public record, and I would like to note these things. So one of the recommendations listed in the 2014 reconnaissance level survey of historic places, that's on page 38, is to investigate the nomination of key properties and districts to the state and national registers of historic places. As a commission, we've agreed to move forward with investigating the potential of an additional village historic district. As we all know, the Potter Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in August 2017. So thought tonight we could just review some basic principles, identify some available materials and resources for us to use in establishing draft boundaries and themes for our potential district. And that's really one of the first steps that you need to do. So over the next month, we can review the materials, do some of our own reconnaissance, walking or driving the proposed district area if we can kind of come up with one this evening. So I also wanted to just bring to your attention, so Jill had sent us the 2014 reconnaissance survey. She gave us tonight a PDF, which is from SHPO, Help for Nominating Sponsors for Historic Districts, and so we would be the sponsor. Also provided us through the email, I believe, with a sample nomination, or actually the Potter nomination, was it? So we can review that and remember all the different elements of that. Also, I don't know if Jill provided this, but we can. The link to the National Trust and to SHPO, they have some really great information online. Jill's idea today was to, as we move forward and decide to move forward with this, we could have a historic district webpage where we could keep all of this information and these resources. So that's just kind of, some brainstorming, and it is good, even though we went through some of us before. Things change since 2017, and there's just a lot to remember about this process. So at the next meeting, we were thinking having more of a discussion on the boundaries, a detailed information about the process, and talk a little bit more about the whys and the benefits to the residents of a district. I think I'm going to skip. I have a note on why this is important, and possibly if we have that there's going to be a workshop on this, we might have some more folks in the audience. So I think that messaging is most important to get out to the community. I think we all feel very strongly about why this is important. And one of the things, all these reasons why it's important, the sense of place, historical context, community bonds, all of that, it really mirrors the Commission's legislative purpose to protect and enhance our landmarks and historic districts, which represent distinctive elements in the village's historic, architectural, and cultural heritage, and to foster civic pride in the accomplishments of the past and protect and enhance the village's attractiveness to visitors and support and stimulate the economy. So kind of why are we doing all of this? So at this point, we do have a larger map that we can show up on the screen, and we've asked Doris to provide an overview of the historic resources map, explain to us again the color coding, and also provide, we had gotten together last week and did a first go at identifying a potential district for your review and discussion. We kind of thought it was like editing, it's always easier if you've got something to work from to start, see if you agree, disagree, but get the ball rolling.
In 2014, as Kara said, that we just had a survey done, and the recommendation was to encourage National Register listings, as well as possibly developing some National Register districts as well as individual listings. I want to make one point clear, because we are, as a commission, allowed to do local districts, but the National Register listing has really no downside to the residents, because there are benefits of tax credits possibly being available, but there are no restrictions. Homeowners can do whatever they want to with their property, which is different than our local designation. I think it's important to keep mentioning that this is the National Register District that we want to propose. So again, the proposal back in 2014 was basically to do 2 historic districts in the village. And one of them was a section of South Main Street. We have a lot of very lovely and historic homes on that street. We have several that are already on the National Register as individual homes. The other areas were quite a bigger district that they were recommending, and also that district included a Potter Memorial and Potter Place. And we have taken that one section, the Potter, and nominated it for National Register District, and it went through. So there's quite a big territory left that was recommended. And just as an example, the Potter District included about 22 properties. And doing an application, a nomination, architectural description, and historical information has to be researched for every property. So what Karen and I kind of talked about was possibly doing a smaller district than what they had recommended and go from Perrin to Woodlawn. And the rationale for stopping it at Woodlawn is, for me, was that the Perrin and West Street were one of our very first streets. And the period of development was from 1850s to 1880 in the turn of the century. So if you're going east to west and you go past Woodlawn, all of a sudden you're getting into the 20th century building. So part of the way to determine a district is the historical connections and the architectural connection. So we have a period of development there that was really, if you look at our survey kind of outlined on page 13, this development that in this area that I'm suggesting we use was during a boom period of in Fairport because of the industrial development, business development, and the railroad. So I think those streets have that connection historically and architecturally. Most of them are from the 1880s. Some of them are from 1850, and one in particular that I can recall was actually moved from West Church to one of those side streets, and that was a very early home. And on West Street, we have 42 West Street, an 1850 Greek revival. So that, to me, those periods, that development of architecture and the common history of that area would make sense for a district. And I mentioned to Kara in a text message today, that's about 60 properties. So it's a lot. I think that when we got this results from the survey back in 2015, the recommendations were a little overwhelming. And I think the approach that we took with Potter was the right way to go about it, to actually accomplish a great deal, have benefits to a great many people at once, and showcase our history in that area. So, anything else that makes sense? So, as Kara said, well, we really need to kind of do a little walking around and see, if you agree with our take on this, if this would be an appropriate and doable section of the village to focus on.
And another thing that Doris had brought up is, we can come up with boundaries that we're thinking about, but then we have a representative from SHPO come out and then go through it with us again. So, this is kind of like that first phase, and really all along the way, if you look at this PDF that is in your packet, it's very helpful. We used it the last time as well, but they really, not that they hold our hands for the process, but they are there to support us and, make sure that we're moving in the correct direction, because they have to approve it first before the federal application. So
to get that involvement going, again, we need to have our own consensus and want to work on this and agree upon the general area. And we would do a preliminary application, which is quite short, but it would include the boundaries we think are appropriate and some of the history behind that area. So that's the first step, and then the state would get involved and help us define that area, and then we can move forward on doing a full application. How do you feel about it, David?
any thoughts?
I have no thoughts on it right now. I will think about it prior to the next meeting.
Laura, do you have any thoughts? Well, one of the things, and this isn't to scare us, but it's the truth because we've been through this before, but one of the phrases that I found in our research is sponsoring a district nomination is a substantial multi-step commitment. And one of the things that it really does involve, and this takes time as well, is really having community outreach, having the support of our local officials, having the support of the neighbors. So that's an element that above and beyond doing the research and everything, we really need to be committed to taking the time to get people on board, to educate. And that's also can be a fun thing, and getting to know our neighbors and things. So, but it is a time-consuming process. Do you have any thoughts, Chuck?
I have a question. So it's both sides of Woodlawn?
Yes.
And then in which it would include West Street, and then both sides of Perrin Street?
Yes, I'd say
I suppose, right? Yeah.
I'd say yes, even though it doesn't, they are highlighted on this particular map.
Yeah.
And the, I guess the other thing Carrie asked me. Sorry, Carrie also asked me to kind of explain the color coding on our map. And basically, any of the ones that were orange were already locally designated, so we have a great deal of research and information about those properties. Red was of the highest integrity and likely individually eligible for the National Register. Green is it contributes to the neighborhood, and the yellow had less integrity. When we go through the area that we want to look at, some of the homes will be considered, some of the properties would be considered to contribute to the district in its architecture and historical significance, and some might not. And if you look at my neighborhood, for instance, which is Faircroft, it has a common history and a common architecture. Everything is built around the same period of time. It was a subdivision called Faircroft. And if you look at my house, it is yellow. And if you go through the list that they made of all these houses, whether they contributed or didn't contribute, my house contributed to the overall character of the neighborhood, but it wouldn't be qualified because of changes that have been made. Architecturally, it doesn't have the integrity to be designated individually. So when we go through, when you ask, Chuck, if the both sides of Perrin would be concluded, I think we need to look at the houses on that street and decide if they contribute to the overall or they don't. If there's enough historical information about them that ties them to that group of homes. Because there are a couple houses on there that, there's one that has Gothic details. It's so there's a few on there that we should, definitely look at and might be contributing and might not be contributing. But you can go to my neighborhood again. We have two houses that were built in the 1980s. So if they wouldn't be considered contributing. And some of them a few of them been changed so drastically that they wouldn't be considered contributing.
Do you want to just also talk about, do you pop across the street on West Avenue? Do you wrap around? Those are all the questions.
Yeah. Well,
I'll let you
what Kara's asking is because if we did, east-west on each one of those streets I mentioned, do we go to West Church in that section, and do we do West Avenue? Do we cross the street, basically? Do we cross the street on West Church? Do we cross the street on West Avenue? We just have to, again, it's going to take a little bit of thought, and we all need to kind of explore a little bit and see what you think we need, would work. And again, traditionally, and I hope that would happen once we get our initial application in, a representative from the state would come and actually walk around and make recommendations and help us make that final district decision of what they felt, what the state feels would work for us. You know, we have now 11 different properties in the village that are National Register district, including the 2 bridges, of course, on top of that. But 11 properties, so it's a lot, and I think the state is very familiar with the quality and the integrity of our architecture in the village. So.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And also, Jill has requested the original map so that she can update some of the newer designated properties. So that will be nice. We'll have that.
A good visual, because it'll
Right, yeah.
help us solidify if this is a solid area.
And so really, you know, looking at this area, and are there other areas that you would prefer? Or, you know, we're very open. We just thought we would start with an area. We thought it made sense, but we'd love to hear your feedback. So if we all do like our homework before we come back next time, we can maybe hit the ground running, maybe have, you know, one-on-one conversations, have a buddy walk with you or something. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about regarding this before we close up this conversation? Oh, he's got mouse hand.
I think it's kind of brilliant, actually. I thought we were going to be talking about Faircroft because it's really I mean, it's really it's a community there.
Since 2014, it's changed, so we have to go through that analysis.
Right.
You know,
But the brilliance of this proposed district is that if it happens to be placed on the register, it would really be really helpful for a lot of these homeowners, which is what is pretty cool about it, because their houses are much older and in need of help. So, yeah, support, financial support, correct, yeah.
That's why we're hoping we would get neighborhood support as well, right? There's very little downside. Yeah. Right.
The other reason I included Woodlawn, besides the era of the houses, is that Woodlawn was a street developed out of, that originally belonged to the Martin Wood farm. So they sold some properties on Woodlawn and created that street. We have 3 houses on that street that are already locally designated. So we have a good core of homes in this area that are already locally designated. So it gives it some strength. And then
So we'll maybe be providing you with a little bit more information. We can send out some links if we haven't done so already. I can't remember. I've had so many emails. But since we have just a minute, let me just run through something really quickly. It was an idea of when we do our meetings, since we do have so many projects and goals that we've been thinking about, is my thought is maybe within the agenda under new business, we list our highest level of goals. So we have like education and support, which is training, technical support, the webpage, engagement and special events, marketing and communications, and then, and designations, and other, and so it's just at the bottom, and so as we're finishing up things, we say, does anyone you're working on marketing, Laura, do you have any news to give us, or any updates, like, we just got an update from Jill about the scavenger hunt, and yes, the tree board would like to collaborate again this year, so news like that keeps things moving forward, even if we're not really focusing on it. What are your thoughts on that? Is it too much? Good idea? Can't hurt.
Can I provide an update while we're talking about that?
Yes.
So we now have preservation news, and so if you haven't seen it yet, we distribute it via Everbridge, And so there is a link to Preservation News on the webpage for Historic Preservation Commission. And Laura will be providing us articles that detail something regarding historic preservation, the homes in the area, our process. So I encourage everyone to take a look at Preservation News because you're going to learn something every single month. So thank you, Laura.
Yeah. And I just want to say, there's a little note here, thank you, Laura. You stole, so, but it was so cool because Everbridge, right before I came here, it like popped up. And so it's what's that sign? And I think it's such a great idea. So thank you very much because, you know, it's just like having something run that we don't have to think about, that you're coming up with all these cool ideas.
Yeah, and if you guys have any ideas, let me know and I'll pop it in for the next one.
Yeah.
Appreciate the ideas.
So, well, I guess that's it. That was all I had. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to say before we leave this meeting? Any other topics for discussion? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that I'll make a motion to adjourn. Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.